Hey everyone, I'm here to discuss the LED Art Robot Creations curriculum. In particular, I want to discuss the programming sections on week 3 and week 4 in our curriculum. Just very briefly, I'm not going to do an in-depth discussion here. I just kind of wanted to show you guys what each of the pieces of code that you see in the curriculum look like on a project. And we're going to go ahead and start with this one. So I have three blocks here, or three major sections. So I have two LEDs off and one on, and then I have a different one on here, but the other two are off, and then I have a different one on here. Excuse me. Yeah, I have a different one on here, and then the other two are off. So what this is going to do is sequentially blink our lights. So it's going to go through one light is on, and then the next light is on, and then the next light is on before it repeats. So why don't I upload this and we'll take a look at how this looks on a project. Okay, so here's our next piece of code. This should allow us to get our LED. I only have one here just for starters. This should get our LED on pin 3 to slowly, gradually brighten. So it goes from dim to a little bit brighter, to a little bit brighter, to a little bit brighter until it reaches its max brightness, and then it starts over from being dim again. So this is opposed to just turning off and turning on. We have a lot more modes here because we're using this set analog pin block. A couple things I want to point out about this. First of all, we're using this repeat between block. You can find it in the control tab. Not too difficult. Secondly, the variable name here and the variable name here are identical. So capitalization is important. Misspellings will hurt you. You need to make sure that these are identical to one another. The best way to do that is to just clone, and then you know for certain that you have exactly the same thing. In addition to that, we have our start and stop points. So we're starting at 20, and then in steps of 1, we're going 21, 22, 23, all the way to 255. 255 is the maximum brightness, so you can't really pick any numbers beyond that. You are welcome to try if you'd like to. It's not going to break your LEDs or anything. It's just that the Arduino will not recognize 255 as anything above. So, or I'm sorry, it will not recognize numbers above 255. So if you pick 300, it's still going to shine the same brightness as it would if you pick 255. I have a delay here of about 10 milliseconds, so it will spend 10 milliseconds at the brightness of 20, and then 10 at the brightness of 21, etc., etc. In our curriculum, I believe I have this number as 100, and that was just kind of a random number I picked after doing this particular project, wiring together this particular LED art. I found that I could dip that number a little bit lower, down all the way to 20, and still get the LED to respond. Oftentimes you won't have that. That all depends on likely the resistor that you're using, and there's also some resistance in the circuit itself. So a higher resistance means that the LED will not turn on until a bigger number. I got lucky enough that I could go all the way down to 20, so that's why I have that here. So let's just go ahead and upload this and see what it looks like. Okay, so here's our next bit of code. As you can see, it's more or less the same exact thing as before. I've just doubled it, essentially. There is another small change. It's right here. So if you'll notice up here, I have start point at 20, stop point at 255. Here I reverse them. So I have start at 255, stop at 20. So I have this repeat between block counting down. So if this repeat between block counting up makes the light brighten over time, it stands to reason that this repeat between block would have the light dim over time. So here I just have brightening to its max brightness and then dimming to its minimum brightness. And I have it, because it's in this loop, it'll do this over and over. So it'll brighten and then dim and then brighten and then dim. Uh, don't really have much else to explain beyond that, so why don't we just see what it looks like. All right, here's the next thing we want to look at. And this should be fairly easy to figure out what it does. It's just, I've got 3 set analog pins in each of these rather than 1. So now I'm going to attempt to get all 3 LEDs to do the same thing. I want them all to brighten and then dim concurrently, so all of them doing this at the same time. Not much else to explain. Why don't we just jump right into it and see what it looks like. You guys can see that on this one, my middle LED here seems to struggle quite a bit to shine whatsoever. I think that's just due to the geometry of the circuit I have here. So current has to travel from here to here or from there to here in order to get to this LED. I assume that's why it's acting kind of strangely for this code. All right, so here's the last thing we're going to look at today. This one I do want to explain in a little more detail. The only thing I've changed is I've added some math to one of these LEDs. So one of the set analog pins in each of these, I have them relating to pin 5. So the LED on pin 5 is going to be behaving a little differently, hopefully, than the other 2 LEDs. What I'm attempting to do here is get one LED to dim as the others brighten, and that same LED to brighten as the other 2 dim. In order to do that, I just want to make sure it's behaving in the opposite way. So, when pin 3 sees the number 255, I would like pin 5 to see the number 20. So how do I accomplish that? Well, the math is not terribly complicated, but for those of you who have a little bit of a math phobia, hey, I don't blame you. I'll just go ahead and tell you that you add your start number and stop number together to get this number here. So if I was in fact doing like on the curriculum where these are at 100 rather than 20, I would have to change this number here accordingly. So 100 plus 255 would give me 355. So that would be the number I would choose to get that desired effect, to get one to be at its lowest point while the other LED is at its highest point. But that's not what I'm doing. We're going to go ahead and go from 20 to 255 because we can, at least for this setup. I think it's likely we see that strange behavior from that middle LED again. I guess we'll have to upload this and see. As you can see, I'm still having this issue here, so I would highly recommend that you consider the geometry of your circuit when you build your LED artwork, and you don't run into problems like mine.